Hello and welcome to episode 289 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. This is wide receiver week. We already brought to you guys the new 2025 top 12 wide receivers. We've been hitting it up on YouTube. Make sure you guys hit that smash subscribe button. Nothing excites me more than talking about foundational wide receivers. We did the running backs last week. We're talking about how to fill in the cracks. But Snoog, when it comes to foundational wide receivers, you and I have been doing this long enough. We know the way to win in Dynasty is to build around those wide receivers and those quarterbacks. Nobody better to chop it up with than my main man Snoog. Let's talk wide receivers, baby.
Yeah, every team I won on this year, and I won a championship, or I placed second in the championship, just making it there, had at least two of these guys on this roster. That's how you got to look at it. These are how you build your Dynasty teams up. You build quarterbacks, you build wideouts, and then you take an absolute advantage of veteran running back values. This is how Dad and I built our teams. This is how we encourage people in the Smash Accept Discord to build their teams and they're just taking after us. They're doing exactly what we do to build these teams, and they had a crazy amount of success. So make sure you do check out the Patreon. That's how you sign up. You'll get email invite link to the Discord right after you sign up through the Patreon, and then as soon as you do that, you'll be right in the Discord and ready to talk shop with 520 plus members that are talking all the time. You get our rankings, you get all of our rookie rankings, startup values, orphans, people putting up values and putting up trades and putting up all that stuff. Community is just talking and building, so you're not just getting our advice, you're getting everybody else's. So something special we're building right now.
The biggest thing we're building is community, and we're a little bit different than everybody else. Last week, we put out a podcast of our top wide receiver sells, and everybody's like, Dad, why are you selling Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, George Pickens, Zay Flowers? Like, you're talking about how these guys are, values, but they're not foundational wide receivers. Snoog and I's teams, the way we build, the formula that we've had is we're taking, last year we were taking guys like Zay Flowers, like, George Pickens, and tiering them up to get in the rookie drafts, to get Brian Thomas Jr. or to get Puka Nacua, or to, move ourselves down in the drafts to get Ladd McConkey, or trading in for Jackson Smith and Jigwas. Because there's certain things that we're looking for when we're talking about foundational wide receivers. Foundational wide receivers are the key to success. Like Snoog said, I had 8 championships this year, and all of them had 2 of these guys in them, because they are putting up 18 to 25 on a regular basis. Your Zay Flowers, your George Pickens, they're putting up 15 on a 50% basis, right? Like, they're averaging 14, but they're only putting up big-time numbers. CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, these guys are doing it on a regular basis. And when you do that, when you have 2 wide receivers like this, and you give yourself the flexibility of filling in the gaps with Alvin Kamara, with guys that are smaller running backs, or the stud class that we have coming in, where you're putting in Omarion Hamptons and Travion Hendersons, now those teams are legitimate, and I think the key for us in the wording and the terminology for foundational wide receivers at Smash Accept is this. You're looking for one wide receiver who's under the age of 25. The reason they're under 25 is we're building long-term dynasties. If I draft a guy that's 28, he has a role for sure, but he's not a foundational piece. He's not something I'm building around. So this is your foundational pieces. If I build around Jamar Chase and he gets injured, I can still tear down to Puka Nacua plus. If I build around Tyreek Hill and he gets hurt, well, that sucks. That's what we're doing. The next part is they got to be a number 1 on their team. They got to be a guy that's force-fed. They got to be 120-plus target type guy. And if you look at this list, every single one of them is the number 1 alpha on their team, or at least a very, very high 1B in a good offense. All right. The next part we're looking at is ideally we want them to have a good quarterback. We want to get that, but that part changes. So let's start off. I mean, for me, tier 1's just 2 guys now. It's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I've moved CeeDee Lamb just down a little bit into the tier below, but Jamar Chase is now my wide receiver 1. Justin Jefferson is my wide receiver 2. I believe both of these guys are still, I know it's draft season, super flex first round picks. I would argue right now, after Burrow, these guys belong at 106, 107 because the quarterback position has gotten bigger, but the wide receiver position has gotten a little bit smaller. So Chase and Jefferson, set it and forget it. they're going to get you 20 points. They're going to be there when you need them.
Yeah, they're as generational as foundational as you can get. They're like those Randy Moss type, those Jerry Rice type guys that are going to be good for 10 plus years. They've broken all these records, rookie records through first 4 seasons, through first 3 seasons. Like they have it all. Like I don't even need to dive into the details. Every single person listening knows that. These are guys that if you can get the Chase Burrow stack, I mean, that helped carry one of my teams to the championship and win it. Like if you can get like a Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson stack this year, like it was very good. It helped you carry you to championship. So both of these guys, I think it depends. Whoever has the better season, you should look to tier off. So Justin Jefferson last year was much better, way more valued than Chase. I took Justin Jefferson in an early second and turned it into Jamar Chase in the 109 last year. I think it was like 2 or 2. So I took like a couple pick difference, tiered back, and now Justin Jefferson has flipped Justin Jefferson. I wouldn't be shocked if they flip again next year or 2 years down the road. But the one thing with Chase is he has Joe Burrow. That's the separate and the difference maker for me. That's why he's the 1 and Justin Jefferson's the 2. But the next guy in this next tier was above Jamar Chase last year and was arguably a lot of people's 1, and that's CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had a 400-plus point season last year. He's tied to Dak Prescott. I know the injury to Dak, the injury to CeeDee, has given us big discounts, but he's another guy, clear-cut alpha wide receiver 1 in Dallas. Guy that's going to command 160, 170-plus targets, a guy that's going to be 1,500-plus yards, 100-plus receptions. Even on a down year with Cooper Rush, he was still one of the best in the league, still very relevant in fantasy football, and he's just one of those elite tier guys that I honestly – maybe 1 or 2 of these guys behind him I could see maybe flipping him eventually with the right QBs. But right now he's my bona fide wide receiver 3, and I don't really see any option unless you're tearing off and going to like Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Nico, and getting a second.
Neighbors. Yeah.
But I think CeeDee Lamb's just that guy right now.
Right now I have tier 2 pretty large, but I would say Lamb, Neighbors, and Amon-Ra, and Puka, and Brian Thomas Jr. are all guys. If I'm tearing off of Jefferson or Chase, it needs to be these guys plus.
Yeah,
I'm not
maybe Nico.
I see a lot of guys who are like, oh man, I got Zay Flowers and 2 random 26 firsts for Jefferson. You're like, sorry, that's not going to work. Like they better hit. You better nail those rookie picks, and it's like you need to have one of these other foundational pieces if you're trading off of Chase and Jefferson. I am 100% giving either Chase or Jefferson if I can get Lamb or Neighbors plus a first. I'm 100% doing it, even if it's a late first, because tier 1 will be 4 wide receivers next year. By October, I think Neighbors in that tier, Lamb's back in that tier, and we're talking about 4 big guys. And that's a lot of people are trying to. Neighbors is still available in trades. Like a guy in the Discord the other day, we did the 112 and Lad McConkey for Malik Neighbors. Lad's hot, but he's not Malik. Like, let's just be honest. No, he's never going to reach that same ceiling. It never. It's just not going to happen, And I think Malik Neighbors, if you can still buy him, you go out there and do that. He's the wide receiver 3, 4, depending on where you're at. And another foundational guy. Doesn't have the quarterback, number 1 in the NFL in targets. Once he gets a legitimate quarterback, I would love to see the Giants trade, like a sign and trade with Sam Darnold. Like just give you someone that Sam Darnold forced Jefferson, made him relevant. And let's be honest, none of these rookies are going to make Malik Neighbors better, but Sam Darnold can do that. And I would really love to see that for his stock. I have a question here from Joe Capadonna, and I really wanted to talk about this. He said, top of the morning, gents. Love your content. Will you guys do an episode where you can send trades for discussions? So right now, you guys can always do super chats. The Discord is where we're putting our primary content, where we're trying to help with Dynasty trades. Snoog and I are committed to trying to do a show once a week where you guys can just drop those in there. But we are answering 100 plus DMs a day between the two of us, sometimes in season, 100 plus each. And that's where you get that one-on-one connection where you can throw a trade on here and just say, Dad, do you want X, Y, or Z? In the Discord, you're going to say, Dad, this is my team. This is the trade. What do you think? And you're going to get a much better answer. It's like doing your taxes with TurboTax versus going to your guy that is going to find all your extra discounts. It is tax season.
Exactly.
Like TurboTax is fine. Yep. It'll get it done. We'll show you. But when you go to a professional, you go to someone to diagnose it, we're going to get you that extra return during tax season. So It should be.
We're gonna help
It
you
should be
build your teams. We're
It
talking
should
about
be a
foundation
tax write-off
receivers. We're gonna build that team for you.
for your portfolio, Snoop. Though our players that are in our Discord should be like, yo, I pay a consultant here. It's just bringing me some
Yeah,
cash on the
literally,
side.
it should
Be
be
able
a tax write-off.
we'll get that going. But tier 2 is awesome because this is the guys where you're getting
so deep.
It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you can't argue with him being foundational. He puts up. I mean, if the draft capital was there and he was 6'3", I think you would still consider him tier 1. But you get a discount on him every year. I don't know why, but we still get a discount on Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
Dude, every time he's out there, it's not Cooper Kupp's offense anymore. Stop trying to play around like it is. Puka Nacua is the man. He gets 12 to 15 targets. And Brian Thomas Jr. has now entered this realm for me. I have moved Brian Thomas Jr. above Nico Collins because Nico Collins is 25 and BTJ is so young. This class, this is where you win insulated trade, Snoop. You mentioned it before with moving from Jefferson to Chase. But if I can move from Jefferson to Lamb to Neighbors, if I can move from Lamb to Puka or Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, I still think you could get Puka, and I've seen it in the Discord, Puka in a first for Lamb and, a 26-second type running back. It's like, why would you not do that? Like Puka Nacua is here to stay. You don't have to worry about draft capital anymore because he's played 2 full freaking seasons of elite level production. Puka belongs here.
The craziest part is every single one of these players that we've just named have at least a good to elite quarterback right now. The only ones that don't is Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, and they were both rookie wide receivers that both hit 1,200 plus receiving yards in year 1. They both played with Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, who was the guy, Tim Boyle. They had Trevor Lawrence there for a little bit, which is good long term. So I think Brian Thomas Jr. does have a good quarterback there long term, but they both hit 80 plus receptions. Neighbors was in that 100 range. They both were averaging 75 plus receiving yards per game. They were dominating the percentage of their team's targets with no quarterback play. They were both like what Garrett Wilson was as a rookie, but better in similarly bad spots. I will never say that there's a situation as bad as the Jets, just coaching wise, franchise wise, quarterback wise, but like that's what separates those two from me from Garrett. Even though I think Garrett, like skill wise, can be close to them. I just think that their long-term success with the franchises they're in are going to be a lot better. And they already are like, they have a lot more that is good for them to see for a new head coach to come in. Like head coach sees that Jets team, like this is a disaster. No QB, nothing to look forward to. Like at least like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas have good future buildings around them and at least good draft capital. And like Brian Dabble is a good coach and like they have all this good situation. But that rounds off that tier for me as well, Dad. I think Nico Collins deserves to be in this tier. I don't know if you mentioned him, but he definitely
can't do it anymore.
He definitely is in the tier for me, for sure.
With the backsliding of Stroud this year, I've moved him down, but he's had some flashes. We'll get there. He
averaged 83 yards per game this year, 1,000 yards, and he played in 11 games. And half of the season he was injured.
The difference for me is the age gap between everybody else there. You know what I mean? But I think he's you could argue he belongs in there for sure. No problem. What I want to talk about is some trades here real quick because I'm looking at like Puka Nacua trades, and this is I've been telling everybody it's time to sell Devon Achane. We saw what he does when Tua's out, and I'm seeing trades here on Dynasty Data Lab. I see Devon Achane and the 202 for Puka Nacua, Devon Achane and Isaiah Likely for Puka Nacua, Devon Achane in the 112 for Puka Nacua. I will pay the 112 to get the most stable wide receiver you can get. And I think these are absolute steals when you can do these kind of things. I see Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb for Puka Nacua in the 111. I'm taking Puka. How about, let's see, Bucky Irving in the 110.
Puka.
Yeah. I'll take a Puka. If it was the 107, I think I would do it.
I just have such a soft spot for the elite young wideouts. I just think like that top 8 we just talked about. You could even say like London, Garrett, Marv, Vlad too. Like I just don't want to sell them. Like if I have one of these 14 guys on my roster, you're wasting your time unless I have Lad and you love Lad and you're like, come get CD or come get Neighbors or come get Chase. But if you're not offering one of these top 14 that we have on this Dynasty show, and I ain't getting Jahmyr Gibbs, Brock Bowers, or Bijan Robinson back in the deal, you're wasting your time with me.
You lost. I mean, this one here, JJ McCarthy and Jordan Addison.
Oh my
on
God.
paper, but no, it's not the actual trade. You know, like that's not what we want you to do. We're not trying to get ourselves into that area. You were talking about, you know, Brian Thomas Jr. So let's pull up some trades on Brian Thomas Jr. because seeing what actually is happening in the community is so much important on a trade where you're like, you know, this guy traded Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans for Brian Thomas Jr. I'm sorry, bro, you got cooked. You know, like it's Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. for Ladd and Chuba Hubbard. I just think I like Chuba, but I just think Brian Thomas Jr.'s ceiling is so much higher than Ladd's. You know,
Brian Thomas could make it close just because Herbert is gonna feed him like that. That could be close from like a fantasy perspective, but talent perspective, it's not close.
No,
it's not.
T. Higgins and a second. That's Brian Thomas Jr. No doubt about it. You know what I mean? Even paying that second to get 4 years younger, even though Higgins has been good. Michael Penix Jr., Jamison Williams, and a late 25 first. It's Brian Thomas Jr. You know, like you draft these guys like a Michael Penix mid-second, and then you picked up Jamison Williams because we told you to buy him for seconds. Now he's worth a first. Now you flip it for Brian Thomas Jr. And that's just funny. The way you win.
It's funny all the people that were like calling people out on Twitter last year, like all these people out here just saying everybody's good, hyping up everybody in this class, and like look what we got. If you weren't high on the top 6 wide receivers in last year's class and weren't 10 to 12 deep in your process, then you're just not built for that. You're not built for evaluating talent. This is how you do it. You have to be able to read the room and know when a class is stacked and know when to up your process. You can't just be like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors are good. The rest of them are hit or miss. Like, no, okay. Anybody can just say that. Like anybody can just say
this
that.
Year.
You have to be able to read the room, like the running backs this year. If you don't have 12 to 14 running backs deep in your process this year, I'm not even going to look at your content. I'm just being completely honest with you.
Absolutely. So we'll throw Nico Collins in that second tier. So tier 1, Chase and Jefferson, absolutely foundational. Those are the guys going round 1. The next couple guys you're taking round 2. I'm taking CD over and Malik, or at least in that same area as Thomas Jr. Or I'm sorry, Lamb, Neighbors, Bijan, Gibbs, Bowers all belong in that same area. Then I'm taking Amon-Ra, Puka, BTJ, and Nico. And then the next area gets kind of fun because these are some guys that you and I hit on. These are some guys that have ascended in value, guys that are in that tier 3. Tier 2, I say, is worth 2 firsts plus. So if you're not getting 2 firsts and one of them being mid for Puka, Brian Thomas Jr., it's bad process. You want to make sure you get there. Tier 3, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I moved all the way up to my wide receiver 9. You can't argue how good he was in 2024, and we knew what he was coming out. Ladd McConkey, I moved up to my wide receiver 10. Again, phenomenal rookie season. Just went out there, put up 180-plus receiving yards, third best all-time for someone's debut, best rookie performance ever. Drake London and Garrett Wilson, and I'm going to throw Tet McMillan in this because these are the guys that I feel like are worth the 102 to 103. So if you have 103 right now and you don't like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, you throw that out there for Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. AJ Brown's in this tier, but he's not foundational because of his age being 27.
Yeah.
But, I mean, let's start with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He is what we thought he was. You know, like a lot of people sold afterwards. I included was selling, but in those sells, Snoog, it's just like we just did the show with Pickens and all those other guys. I'm not selling. I didn't sell Jackson Smith and Jigba for Jacoby Myers in the 112. I was tearing up from Jackson Smith and Jigba to get to Puka Nacua. I was tearing up from Jackson Smith and Jigba to get to Nico Collins. I wasn't trading him for a tier down because these guys are still foundational assets. You know, wide receiver 9, JSN, 10, Ladd, 11, Garrett, 12, London, and for me, 13, Tet McMillan. You're building around these guys.
Yeah, I have it slightly different. I have London above all these guys. I have London, Garrett, Marv, Ladd, and JSN in the same tier, but kind of all just it's a tier, so it's the same thing. It's split.
That's what's important.
You can argue any of them on any given day. But for JSN, I mean, this is a guy that we were so high on as a prospect. We knew the talent was there. The situation with Lockett, DK, and Geno there, and Pete Carroll at the time was iffy. Like we knew that was going to be maybe a chalk rookie year 1. It was kind of up in the air. He did have a mid-year one, but he looked good. He flashed. We were buying him everywhere. We were saying he's one of the breakout guys, along with guys like George Pickens, BTJ, Worthy, Ladd, all those guys. JSN, 1,100 yards, 100 plus receptions, had that big breakout season, 28% target share. He was one of the top 10 finisher. We knew it was going to come. We knew the talent was there. We comped him to Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out of school. He's literally playing the Amon-Ra St. Brown role in a much worse offense. That's literally what he is. If they can somehow get a damn quarterback, because I'm sick of seeing Geno Smith on that team, and a better offensive coordinator this upcoming season, I think JSN can take that big jump, like you said. But I mean, let's jump into Drake London, Garrett Wilson. These are two guys.
I got a bunch of Jackson trades. I got to go over these.
Oh, yeah. Go through them.
Josh Downs, the 201 and the 206, or Jackson Smith and Jigba. Gosh,
get Josh Downs off your damn team. Get him off your team.
Jackson Smith and Jigba for the 106. I see Jackson Smith and Jigba for the 107. Anything 104, I would pay 104. I'd pay 103. I have him over Garrett now. But
He'd be wide receiver one in this class coming out.
Michael Penix Jr. in 2 seconds for Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's bad.
Yeah.
Now here's an interesting one, because this guy I have as my 14th foundational wide receiver, and I think if he was not injured, would honestly be way now. It's Rashee Rice. Rice in a second, or JSN.
I take JSN, but that's close. If it's
close, right?
Just because the second's not worth the risk with Rashee's legal and his injury for me to make that trade. It'd need to be 201, 202 for me to do that. But if it's a late second, I'd take JSN.
Dude, these are crazy. Jaden Reed and Penix Jr. No, it's JSN. Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnson in a second. That's what we're telling you to do. When we're telling you to sell Zay Flowers, we're telling you to do that. We're telling you to tear up. Chase Brown in a second for Jackson Smith and Jigba.
JSN. It's funny because it's probably going to be like this for all these guys we're going to talk about now. Our 9 through 14, 15-ish. It's going to be like this for all these guys. I think Marv, Ladd, Rashee, they're all going to be similar trades where you can turn Jaden Reeds, Chase Browns, Michael Penix Jr.'s. This is that read the room, know when a guy isn't good and his dynasty value is being inflated type of move.
I mean, you tear up off of these guys, and then you fill in like this one here. George Pickens, Jonathan Brooks in a 26-second, or Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're using Jonathan Brooks' injury a second to go from Pickens, who scores 10 points or more in 47% of his games, versus Jackson Smith and Jigba, who just finished top 8. That's how you win those things. Now, the next guy you wanted to talk about, was that Ladd?
It was going to be Drake London.
Okay, Drake London was the wide receiver 1 overall when Michael Penix Jr. played in those. It was a small sample size, but he absolutely dominated targets. He dominated the way he was playing. He's what we wanted him to be. So I don't fault anybody having Drake London over Ladd McConkey, over Garrett Wilson, over, I don't fault anybody for having him there just because he's that good. We knew what the talent was going to be. I'm trying to pull up the 3 starts that Penix Jr. had: 39 targets, number 1, 352 yards, number 1, 23.1 fantasy points per game, number 1, tied with BTJ, 39% target share, number 1, 22 receptions, 3rd. So we might actually have someone here that can unlock Drake London. No one's unlocking Kyle Pitts, just sell him. But Drake London, and your window to sell is now, your window to buy is over. I don't see being able to, you can't buy Drake London now because you're not going to get value.
I don't think he's close to his ceiling, but I don't think he'll ever be a 1,700-yard guy. I think he's going to be consistent 1,100 to 1,300-yard guy, 90 to 100 receptions, 6 to 10 touchdown type guy. He's just that foundational, top 12 wideout. You're 1 on your team. He's your wide receiver 2. He's a guy you're building around. He's young, elite prospect. He hit that 75-plus receiving yard mark, 1,271 yards total, 280-plus fantasy points. I think what separates him from Garrett Wilson, and I think Garrett's a better player, better talent, has a higher ceiling. The situation, the foundation the Falcons have built, the coaching staff, Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins, whoever the quarterback is, everything about the Falcons is better than the Jets. As of right now, at least. 2 years down the road, it could change. But just transitioning right into Garrett Wilson for me. This is a guy 1,000+ yards in 3 straight seasons with the Jets. I could list, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Aaron Rodgers, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, Chris Streifler, or whatever that tight end quarterback guy was who started for like 3 games. Like he's had like 7, 8, 9 horrible quarterbacks throwing him the football. Don't matter. Every day, every week, every year, shows up, 1,000+ yards every single season. The talent's there, the draft capital's there, blue chip type prospect. He has top 5 dynasty wide receiver upside. I mean, before Rodgers brought in Devontae Adams, when Garrett was starting to become his guy, we saw that. Like he was like the wide receiver 2 or 3 for a while. Like we saw that upside finally, and that's all I needed to see. Rodgers, you can kick to the curb. I don't want to see you anymore. Just bring in someone new. It could be Cam Ward, could be Sanders, Jackson Dart. Who knows who it's going to be? But I think Garrett Wilson, what separates Drake London and Garrett Wilson with Ladd McConkey is they're just more talented. They're just better wide receivers, more talented players. The situations aren't as good, but I think that long-term longevity is going to be better.
So Garrett Wilson, again, I always put out my buys and my sells in the beginning of each month, and then I update them in the Discord only. But these are the type of moves that people are making. Kyron Williams for Garrett Wilson, smash. You're like Garrett Wilson for Tank Dell in the 106. Tank Dell is literally a point where you're just using him to build up. You're just using him to tier up unless you're rebuilding.
I don't think he'll ever be the same again. Too many catastrophic leg injuries. It's sad. It's really sad. It's someone that really likes the Texans too. So
yeah. And we're just saying buy up of these guys. I mean, we got George Pickens in the 111 for Garrett Wilson in a second. I'm taking Garrett Wilson. Yeah. Like we're telling you to sell these guys. We're telling you to buy other guys, and it works every time. Now on the flip side, we talked about insulated trades. At this point, okay, and this is nice. It's Jamar Chase, the 105. I'm sorry, Jamar Chase or Garrett Wilson, the 105 and a 26 first. I'm taking 2 firsts on top of this now.
I think Garrett Wilson's
still going in that
then
area.
you could always go, okay, let me take Garrett in a second or Garrett in a mid-second and go get Nico. Go get Brian Thomas. Go get Puka type person. And then it's like, so I gave up Chase in a second for Puka and 2 firsts. Like that's the type of thing that I would be looking to do.
I see 2 more on here. Chris Olave and a second for Garrett Wilson and T. Higgins in a second for Garrett Wilson. I'm taking both of those too. T. Higgins, if I'm a contender, if it's like 202, I might take it. Because if I can get T. Higgins and maybe Cam Scatterbo, I get somebody else that's like a big time running back. But that tier 2 is really where you're going to make your money. Because I think we're talking really safe floors, really high upside with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. And I have Tet McMillan in here because I have these guys are all worth the 102, 103. If you told me he went to New England and he had 1,000 yards year 1, like he belongs up in that next tier. Like I think he would make that jump. If Garrett, if Jackson Smith and Jigba has another good year, I think he moves up to tier 2. I think, Drake London could move up to tier 2. I don't think Ladd McConkey or Nico Collins ever really go too much higher than where they are right now. Like Nico's capped, but he's phenomenal. Ladd McConkey, like how much I've seen, could you ever put him above?
I was just going to ask you.
That's
it's
the thing.
Tough.
He can't get up there.
He just had 197 yards in a playoff game against an elite defense where he was top 3 of all time as a rookie. Or he might have been top 3 all time as a guy that had the most yards in a single playoff game, which was like with Calvin Johnson and someone else. But Ladd had a kick-ass rookie season. Like he had 1,100 yards, 80+ receptions. He only played in like 15, 16 games. Finishes a top 12 wide receiver. Tied to Justin Herbert. Like everything's there for him. We were high on Ladd coming out. We had him as top 6 wide receiver in a stack class. We said that he was going to be a first-round pick. He didn't, but he was right there, very close to it. He should have been a first-round pick. I think that there's another rookie wide receiver that people are sleeping on that we're going to talk about very soon that I think can jump all these guys when he hits his stride.
I know who we're talking about, but I see it straight up. Marvin Harrison Jr. for Ladd McConkey. Now, I did not draft a single share of Marvin Harrison Jr. You know that. Across all my leagues, I was tearing down to Malik. I was tearing down.
Or I did. I traded him, though.
But would you rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. or Ladd McConkey right now?
That's one of those just tough ones.
I mean,
I think if you switch the teams, it wouldn't be close. I think if you
No,
switch the teams, Marv would have been the best rookie wide receiver this year
agreed.
for sure.
But
It's situational basis matters. Like people like want to. You see the name Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray sucked. He was terrible this year. Marv had like 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. Was overthrown on probably 4 touchdowns. Was missed on probably 2 to 3. Like he should have had like 12 touchdowns this year.
The way I'm handling this is I'm trying to if I'm really trying to trade Ladd for Marv or Marv for Ladd, I am including a secondary piece in this trade, and I'm trying to win that secondary piece. A lot of times people don't pay attention to that, but if you look in your tiers, right, even amongst the same tier, let's go over to the running back position, guys that are similarly ranked. Like let's look in, say, tier 4, where you have Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, Christian McCaffrey. Maybe you really like Kenneth Walker, or maybe you really like Chase Brown, so you trade one of those guys and you change around the tier to a guy you believe in more so.
I'm thinking like, or you take like a Brian Robinson Jr. or like one of these guys that's like not worth the first, but people might view them as like a early second, and doing like a flip flop, like a Marv and a 27 first for Ladd and Brian Robinson Jr. or for like a Cooper Kupp plus a second, like stuff like that is what you can do. But
you brought up Marv, who I think is the 14th guy that I would say is a foundational wide receiver. I'm not as comfortable with him as my foundational wide receiver. If he's my 2, I'm fine. If he's my 1, I don't feel good at all. I really don't right now. Now, flip side, my wide receiver 15, who I have as a foundational wide receiver, if we knew the legal ramifications, Rashee Rice is over Marv for me. If he gets suspended 6 games or less. If it's a full year, it's a new game, and that's where he's the value.
Marv had his rookie CeeDee Lamb year. That's what he had. Justin Jefferson had this crazy year. A lot of these rookie wide receivers have been having these crazy years. CeeDee Lamb had like 900. He had like 900 yards and like a couple touchdowns, and like everyone was like, "Oh my god, like overrated, overvalued. When's his time going to come?" The next year, I think he only had like 1,000 or 1,100 yards. Everyone said the same thing. And then that year 3, which was that year I predicted that big breakout from him, I had him everywhere. It was a big reason why I won a lot of leagues last year, 2 years ago. And he had that 300-plus point season. And then the next year, he had that 400-point season. So I really look at them in similar strides because they're like those crazy prospects that came in and underperformed, but still had very good rookie years.
Well, like what about
Jackson
JSN?
Jigba had 600 yards. Like people gotta realize it's okay to not be Jamar Chase year 1. Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors on offenses that were always playing from behind, always throwing the football, always had a gunsling. Only guys that would they also had like Marv had like 11 or 111 targets. Like that's a big gap from 160 like Malik Neighbors had. Like if you gave Marv another 50, 60 targets, I'm sure he would have had 1,200 yards. Like that's how you got to kind of look at it. So don't be scared. If you have Marv, hold him. If you don't have Marv, go out and buy him. See what it looks like. See what DJ Moore Plus can get you for Marv. George Pickens, Zay Flowers.
I'm tearing up, not trades. Down here. Yeah. Go off of Rome, Zay, Pickens, Addison, Devonta, Olave. Try to go that way.
Take Addison, take an early second, and go get Marv. Like
the 2 productive guys that we both have in our top 20 who don't come in as foundational it's T. Higgins and AJ Brown. They're not considered foundational wide receivers. Even same with Devonta Smith. They're a little bit older, but I feel like they still have their own value. The next couple of guys I don't see as foundational. I want to get your opinion, but I mean it's Pickens, Flowers, Odunze, and Olave. Can you see any of them getting up to the next level?
Rome Odunze. Potentially.
If Ben Johnson goes and they get rid of somebody else.
Yeah, he's another one of those like Keenan Allen. I look at him like a Keenan Allen because Keenan Allen had that rookie arc where it was like mediocre rookie season and then started blowing up. He has Caleb Williams there. He flashed a lot this year. So he had his Jackson Smith and Jigba rookie year. He really did. He had a lot of good games and big plays, and then he had a lot of where the hell is Rome Odunze plays. Like he's not even like playing, not on the field, not getting open, just nowhere to be found on the offense. They had no coach. They had a crowded wide receiver room. There was always one wide receiver, at least, or 2 on that Bears, whether it was Cole Kmet Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore that had a 20-plus point week. So Caleb has that upside to construct this offense to be fantasy relevant and be very good for fantasy football. We were just too early on this whole offense. We should have realized rookie QB, rookie wideout, terrible coaching staff, no chemistry. There's a lot that needed to be built for that offense, and they need the experience. So hopefully a Ben Johnson can come in and help save it.
Could you imagine
these type of coaches? But
flip Caleb and Jaden. Like Jaden goes to that situation, he's not going to make it work either. Then he's going to be Justin Fields plus. But he had a stable coaching staff and decent weapons. Nothing great. Caleb goes there, it might help.
The coaching staff matters. It puts you your coaching staff and your coordinators are there to put you in the best situation possible. They're supposed to build a scheme around your strengths and around your skill sets as a quarterback, as a wide receiver, as a running back, as an offensive line. That's what they're there for. And if they can't do that for you as a young QB, especially, it's going to kill you. It's going to crush you. And we saw that with Fields. We saw that with Trevor Lawrence lately. We've seen that with Zach Wilson. All these guys that were viewed as these high, Caleb Williams, like Bryce Young. Look at Bryce Young before Dave Canales. He literally was the worst rookie QB ever. Like he was statistically on every metric the worst rookie QB ever. And Trevor Lawrence was one of those too. And look at them both now. The coach will change your life as a quarterback, and it'll elevate the talent around you. And that's why I'm still high on Rome Odunze, but I think he's not foundational until he proves it type of player.
Yeah. And I'm kind of it's very positional. It's like dependent on value, what you're going to get. Because a lot of times I was looking at one of the most inefficient seasons we've ever seen. A lot of that goes on Caleb, but the way he was able to, it was bad. It was bad in a lot of ways. I'm seeing trades for Rome right now. Michael Penix Jr. seems to be a hot name despite only one QB finish out of those top four. So everybody's like that last game, like we're just going to keep building. Rome for Penix straight up. I'm taking Rome there. Rome for Waddle. I'll take Rome there. 110 for Rome and a 27 first. Wow, you have rookie fever. I'm sorry. Rome and Drake May or Malik and Sam Darnold. It's still Malik, but that's kind of a fun one.
I just think Darnold's going to get that vet contract like Geno got, like Baker got somewhere, like whether it's, I don't know, the Giants, wherever he ends up, the Raiders, who knows, but I think he's going to get that. It might be the Vikings again.
It's got to be a sign. It's got to be a sign.
Why are we sure JJ McCarthy's good? Like, why is he just automatically good and automatically going to take over a guy that just brought his team 14-3? They have a chance to make it to the divisional round if they win tonight. Why is JJ McCarthy automatically ruled better? There's no reason he should be. So I think the Vikings have some thinking to do. The only reason is you save a ton of money. You draft them high. I get that. I get that.
You're gonna save $40 million a year.
But you think the team that just went 14-3, one of the top NFC contenders, is just gonna trust a rookie QB that's never played a snap in the NFL other than preseason to come off a season-ending injury and bring them back to that? No. Yeah. You at least bring Darnold back for a year, right? Like you at least bring him back for 1 year, is my opinion on that. But
franchise tag kind of deal. How about Kyler Rome? Kyler Rome 2 seconds or Herbert and Ladd?
Herbert and Ladd.
Yeah, I'm there too. Rome Odunze or Tyreek Hill in a third or Rome Odunze?
Rome.
Rome and Nix or Lawrence, Hubbard, and a late first?
Nix and Rome.
See, I'm taking Lawrence there. I'm kind of
actually,
like low key.
Yeah, I'm taking Lawrence. I'm taking Lawrence there. Yeah.
Rome.
Like what? Like why can't Lawrence be better than Nix? Like he absolutely can be, especially if they get a good coach this offseason. Yeah, like especially with the weapons. Yeah, Lawrence is my favorite QB by.
Me too. A-Chain and Keon Coleman or Rome in the 106.
Rome in the 106.
Yeah, take yourself another running back, and you're going to get much, similar type production. London or Rome and a projected mid to early 27 first.
I would take Rome in the early first.
If it was late,
27
there's no
class
chance.
is going to be special. Yeah,
it absolutely is. All right, here's an interesting one: Saquon or Rome, Chuba, and a second.
Saquon.
Yeah, it's close. It's close. I'm loving that we're getting dynasty trades rolling again. A lot of leagues were really tight. Best way to win your dynasty trades, best way to see things is all in our Patreon. Every single player has a rookie value equivalent. So if you don't like the 102, you go into our, rooms with all of our rankings. You say, what players are going for the 102 right now? And you start to look there and you're like, oh, wow, I can buy this player for the 102 or that player, construct trades, talk shop with Snoog and I, where we can walk you and talk you through some trades. One guy in the playoffs was going to trade. Hold on, I got to think what it was. T. Higgins and 2 firsts for Puka Nacua. And T. Higgins went off in the playoffs. One of those firsts became the 103. And he's like, dang, you talked me off a cliff on that one. Now you have multiple assets. And there's so many scenarios where we're not going to give you, go ahead and make that trade so you feel better. We're going to put ourselves in your shoe and make a trade like I would or like Snoog was. Like, I'm never going to go in there and be like, oh, no, I like that. Just so you feel better. I'm going to say, dude, that's bad. We got to go back to the drawing board. This is how I would do it. And that's why Snoog and I have 4 to 5x our money over the last couple of years. That's why we're trying to pass that on to you guys. That's why the community is so sharp and things like that. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Make sure you guys check out the Patreon and enjoy the process. Hey, yo.